Joining us now to talk about the state of volunteering in Canada, Ruth MacKenzie. She is the president of Volunteer Canada, and she joins us on the line from the nation's capital. Hi, Ruth. How are you tonight?
Hi, Steve. I'm great. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. I want to share with you and our viewers the year for which the latest figures are available. These are 2007 numbers on volunteering in Canada. We had close to 12.5 million Canadians who volunteered in this country a couple of years ago, equivalent to 46% of the population aged 15 and over. Those 12.5 million volunteers contributed more than 2.1 billion volunteer hours. That's equivalent to almost 1.1 million full-time jobs. The top 25% of volunteers contributed 78% of all volunteer hours. That according to StatsCan. We wanted you on the program tonight, of course, because tomorrow is International Volunteer Day. So let's start with this. Why do Canadians volunteer?
I think volunteers are compassionate people, and Canadians are compassionate people. What we also know from the statistics that you've quoted is that about 85% of the population are also engaged in informal helping out a neighbor. So the values around volunteerism are really strong in this country, and I think people recognize how transformative volunteer involvement can be. It transforms communities, it transforms our world, it transforms people's lives, both in terms of those who are recipients of volunteer service and the volunteers themselves. So
the cliche is true, the more you give, the more you get.
You bet, absolutely.
How do we compare to other countries in volunteerism?
The stats in Canada are very impressive. We have one of the strongest voluntary sectors in the world, and Canadians volunteer at rates much higher than other countries.
And who is most likely to do it?
Well, we know that that most people who volunteer are they tend to be well educated, they're university educated, they tend to be on the upper end of the socioeconomic status. People who have school-age children in the home volunteer more, obviously because they're involved in activities that their kids do. So there's a really strong culture of volunteering. People who are over the age of 55 are the ones who make up that 25% of the volunteers doing the bulk of the work. So that age group is very, very engaged, and that's actually a bit concerning for us down the road. That's a big chunk of the volunteer time contributed by an aging population. So we really need to be thinking about how to get youth involved.
Well, that's exactly where I wanted to follow up, because presumably the people who are providing those services are going to be needing those services in,
that's right,
in the not too distant future. Are you concerned that we're not going to be able to replace those volunteers?
Well, I think we need to be watching the trends and the stats carefully. We need to be really looking at how future generations and demographic cohorts become involved, what they're looking for in their volunteer experiences, and we need to make sure that we're supporting volunteer organizations so that they can respond to those trends.
Okay, let me shift our conversation to not just the issue of volunteerism, but volunteering in a recession. What happened in the recession of the early 1990s in terms of the number of people who were prepared to volunteer?
I don't really have the stats back in the 1990s handy, but
my hunch is it went down, though. Is that right? Fair to say?
That's anecdotally, that's what we've heard. We don't have statistics around that.
How about this time around?
This time around, we are seeing voluntary organizations having a really difficult time recruiting volunteers. People are busy looking for jobs. They are concerned about other things than volunteering and necessarily their community. At the same time, we're seeing a real need for volunteers increase. So we're seeing some organizations shut down programs that were previously run by volunteers. They don't have enough volunteers, but more importantly, they're also laying off staff, and those staff are often the individuals who are managing the volunteers. So without the staff to support the volunteer effort, they often can't run the programs.
So when we need it the most, we have it the least. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay, what's that doing to our society?
Well, I think it says that we need to recognize the importance of the voluntary sector as a pretty vital component to our healthy, quality communities in this country, and we need to make sure that they're getting the support they needed. We need people to step up as donors. We need government and foundations to step up as funders.
Can you give me one example of a kind of volunteerism that as a result of this recession isn't happening anymore? Maybe it didn't get funding, and who's suffering as a result?
Yes, actually, I presented to the Standing Committee on Finance in their pre-budget consultations last month, and we did a lot of story gathering from our members. So we have a few stories around what happened, and VON Canada had a program called SMART that they've had to shut down in several communities. Again, they've had to lay off their manager volunteers, and they weren't able to leverage the volunteers for that program. And that program was about linking older people together to support them in terms of independent living. So, you know, that's a bit of a problem. Another program we heard of was an interesting program with the Brain Injury Association that worked with the pet therapy program to support patients who were getting speech therapy. And the pet therapy program helped calm the individual clients down so that they could be more receptive to their speech therapy. The pet therapy program closed down because of a lack of volunteers and support, and so the Brain Injury Association was having challenges with their clients receiving speech therapy.
So what do we assume happened to those clients?
Well, I guess, you know, the organizations, the voluntary sector is pretty resilient, so, you know, they do what they can to support people. I'm sure they were still getting speech therapy, but it's a matter of how successful it is too, and it takes longer then to recover.
Ruth, tell me this. Obviously, the whole gist behind volunteering is you do something without the expectation of getting paid for it. But if you had to put an economic value on the work that is done by volunteers, any guess about what it would turn out to be?
Well, I would say it's priceless, wouldn't you? I mean, we can calculate the value of volunteer time if we want to select a particular wage for a particular job, but I think it's pretty difficult to put a price on holding the hand of a dying child in hospice work, or to put a price on the value of a minor league soccer team in a community. It's certainly worth much more than the volunteer time of coaches who contributed to that team. So, you know, it really is about qualitative data for the voluntary sector and then what they contribute to community.
I totally appreciate what you're saying, and priceless is actually a good way to put it. But humor me for a second here. My hunch is that if you put a price tag, you know, if you had to pay somebody to do all of the work that people are now doing for nothing, I mean, society's got to be tens, if not more than $100 billion worth of free service out there. Is that fair to say?
Well, there's certainly some stats in terms of the contribution of the sector in the context of the GDP. You know, one of the things we do say regularly that the voluntary sector is about 8% of the gross domestic product, bigger than the manufacturing industry.
What's the number? I don't know what 8% of our GDP is. You got a sense of it?
I don't have the number handy, no.
Okay, we'll look it up afterwards.
All right.
Is there a peak in volunteering during certain periods of the time during the year?
Well, certainly during the year in the holiday season, there's a real peak in volunteering. In terms of a certain time in people's lives, the highest stats are in the 35 to 45 age group, where people are engaged in volunteering when they have young children in the home. We also know that the highest rate of volunteering is in the 15 to 24 age category. They volunteer at about 52% for their age group as compared to the national average of 46, but they're contributing fewer hours. But what that does tell us is that the myth about the cynical, disengaged youth is not true.
No, that's good to hear, but why do you think they're so involved?
Because I think they care about community. I think for young people, there's a real opportunity to build connections and build skills. And
how about they have to do it for school?
Well, that's certainly the situation here in Ontario. We haven't found a strong link in the survey between the mandatory community service and volunteer hours, and we're very careful to distinguish the mandatory 40 hours from the act of volunteering, which is given of your own free will. But it's certainly an opportunity to build values around volunteering in young people that will hopefully be carried throughout their life. We do know that an indicator of volunteering later in life is that you've been exposed to volunteering earlier in life, in primary school or secondary school, or having parents volunteer. If you've been exposed to volunteering at a young age, you're likely to be engaged throughout the life cycle.
Gotcha. You've got about a minute and change to go here, and I want to give you a chance to talk about this campaign you're running called Give a Day, Get a Day. What's that all about?
Give a Day, Get a Day is a campaign that we are working on in partnership with Disney. Starting January 1st, individuals who volunteer in an organization that has signed up through a specific website, they can contribute a day of volunteer service, and they get a free pass to a day in a Disney park.
Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Sounds like it.
Okay. Ruth, it's good of you to join us, and happy International Volunteer Day tomorrow. Ruth MacKenzie, President of Volunteer Canada. Thanks so much.
Thank you.